that one should work.
Oh, because it does everything one go. Okay.
All right.
Should work if I maybe. Okay. Yes.
Cool. Hi, everyone. This is the every 2 weeks meeting of the IPLD team. It's July the 22nd of 2019. And yeah, this meeting is about just chatting about what we did and also things that we'd like to discuss within the team. And I guess I just start as I don't have that much to say because I was on vacations for 2 weeks. I had 1 week of catching up with things, and I currently spend my time on wrapping up the JS IPLD DAG PB work because we want to make things simpler. And kind of for me, it's the plan to finally getting all those changes in, and then I hopefully won't need to touch the JS IPLD things that we currently have that much in the future. So that's the plan, to basically wrap it up. So I'm free to work on the stuff that I should work on, or like it's planned I work on, which is Rust IPLD and stuff like this. So yeah, cool. Next on my list is Eric.
I have had tons of exciting time to do code gen and typed node stuff, so that's been fun. There's a whole bunch of stuff there that had been kind of like getting no time and attention for a while. So in the last couple of weeks, I finally got to start doing serious prototypes of code generation, and just immediately found all sorts of stuff from the first draft of the type node interfaces in the Go libraries that were just like wrong. Like the first draft placeholders hadn't had any flesh behind them, so they were just like guessing wildly. So lots of that has been thrown out, and lots of things that actually are the right shape are starting to come deformed. So there's now a distinction between like type kinds versus the data model kinds. So like struct is a kind that you can have in the schema system, but it's not in the raw data model, of course. And so now we have a typed node interface coming along, and it's got the ability to do some inspection on the type that describes it. And it still acts like a regular node in every other way, the same interface as the data model stuff does. And then they have a second kind of node that they can be treated as, which does the representation stuff. So like, this is how the whole system will work out from the library's perspective. When you have like a struct type with a tuple representation, it'll actually have two nodes that refer to the same data. One of them will act like a map, and one of them will act like a list. The amount of work that's ahead in CodeGen is absolutely massive, and I'm trying to sort of skitter around and do the minimum things to figure out where all the hard problems are supposed to be. So at the moment I'm working on structs because those are by far one of the most complicated things. I did some of the simple scalar stuff like a typed string, and that was just easy. So I'm skipping over the rest of those until later. And I'm kind of scared about some of the complexity around unions in the future, but I'm going to do those after I finish structs. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. Selectors are also rolling along really, really fast, by the way. Hannah isn't here to tell us about how cool her work is, but she is, I don't want to say they're done in case they're not done in her opinion, but they look like they're pretty close to done.
She said they were done.
All right, I agree then. Like, holy crap, it's really cool. Yeah, she's got a PR doing integration with the GraphSync stuff already, so like, just cool. Yep, that's what's new for me.
Cool. So next one on my list is Rod.
Right. So I've been primarily playing with a practical implementation of some of our work. So NPM as a data set. One of the reasons I'm interested in NPM is I actually have a use case for it. I have a website, nodei.co, nodei.co. Years ago, I made this service for putting NPM badges onto your GitHub READMEs. It became really popular in, a large portion of NPM packages, GitHub pages, you'll see these little badges on it. It sort of rotted on the vine for a few years. And I recently picked it up and started cleaning it up again. But it turns out that NPM's API has become more restrictive. Their commercial concerns have stopped them making easy access to certain bits of data. And so you need to do, interesting stuff. You need a local copy of it to be able to have your own database to do queries. So my thought a while back was, well, why don't I do something with IPLD and actually use IPLD as a local NPM database and use that as a way to extend some of these ideas. It's not the most efficient way to do it. Like, the most efficient way would just be to feed it into a classic database and query that. But this is an interesting way of doing it. And anyway, so I've been messing around with that, how to store this data and query it. It's going well, and it's making me explore a lot of interesting areas that I think are really useful for me to have my head around. So far, I'm avoiding the DHT. I'm not doing anything with libp2p at the moment. It's just blocks and fetching blocks, storing blocks, really simple operations. So the idea is to do something that just uses HTTP to serve blocks as a fill-in for maybe something more sophisticated later on. Maybe it could go on libp2p and be something that's useful. There's challenges I keep on thinking about in this domain. One of them is, how do you update? I know the package managers folks have to deal with this stuff, and I saw there was a discussion in there about IPNS. Adin was starting to sync with them about their needs on IPNS, and so hopefully IPNS becomes a useful thing one day. But for now, it's like, how do you? So you've got a root block for this complex array of data. How do you, first of all, trigger an update, and then how do you perform an update on that? So been thinking a lot about the idea of mutable links. These blocks that have some mechanism of saying there's there's some sort of expiry where if you're beyond this time, then maybe you should explore, if you can, getting a new version of me. And here's here's a way of verifying that the replacement of me that you fetch from this place is actually valid. So just thinking about that sort of problems. And then also on the client side, so when you're querying this thing and you're fetching blocks and you're building your own local version of what you need of it, how are you storing it? I've been looking at I think it's the block service API that everyone's using for IPFS, looking at performance concerns there and seeing if there's any interesting optimizations for this particular use case. But anyway, it's just an interesting problem set, because it's there's a whole bundle of concerns that it's forcing me to think about, and I think it's helping me to get into a similar headspace to everyone else that has been working on this stuff for longer than I. So that's pretty much what's been absorbing my time.
Cool. Thanks for the update. Stephen, do you have anything? Did you do any IPLD work? Okay. Or want to share something?
No.
Okay. It's fine. I've just posted 2 new agenda items that came to my mind, because, first of all, there was a lot of stuff happening while I was on vacations. So kind of the whole WASM thing kind of blew up, or become big, and it took me time to catch up. And when I was finally caught up, Michael was on holidays, so we couldn't really think about that much, about this part that much. And yeah, I just wanted to discuss with the team because, yeah, I've also talked with some of you already that I have the impression that Michael is really excited about this WASM stuff, which is cool. I'm also kind of excited, but I think about it differently. So I really see it less like a researchy thing and not really, so it shouldn't really block anything. Because I think in some document there were notes about the relation between WASM and the Unix FS v2 work. And I don't think there is really any relation. Like, of course, in the future there might be relation, but currently it's not something that at least I plan for. Okay.
So
and yes,
just to give some context on this, like, yes, like we started going down the WASM rabbit hole because of like the Unix OS and all these things. And they realized, wait a minute, this is going to be really complicated. We need something now. So we're going to have Unix OS 2, and then we're going to have Unix OS 3 eventually. And Unix OS 3 will be like, basically we'll be able to interpret Unix OS 2 using Unix OS 3. At least if you do this correctly, I think.
Okay, yeah. Yes, yeah, agreed. And I also like, so basically what I want to say is, yeah, so really like the WASM stuff shouldn't block any other work we're doing. I think that's, so any other opinions on this? Like, yeah.
I know just from what I understand of the way Michael thinks about it, I think he's trying to use it as a tool to get to an ideal future. So keeping in mind that the impracticalities of WASM now, how can we target a future where those impracticalities might be overcome and that this thing is inserted? And so that's why, whenever I talk to Michael about this stuff, it's like, he's taking some of the decisions that might otherwise look strange have got this WASM future in mind. And so that some of the stuff around composites, the discussion about terminology, all that sort of stuff seems to be very heavily informed by this WASM future for him. And, I'm not invested either way, to be honest. I can see there's a lot of barriers right now. Maybe one day it will be practical, but
I think it's inevitable because like every time we look at this problem, it always leads back to shipping code to people.
right.
But then that always turns into this, like, well, it's like there are a lot of complicated problems you need to solve first. We deal with like interoperability, upgradability, to people writing the same or writing different code, and like, I mean, these things work together. It's and then of course those security concerns. So that's why Unicode can't really block on it. But given that WASM will effectively be shipping arbitrary code, I think we should be able to basically do whatever we want now, and then use like the WASM stuff to interpret what we have now effectively. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're like we can implement the functions later that interpret what we make now.
Yeah, and so the way I've been going with my code and even the algorithms I've been writing for the specs is trying to boil them down into single operations. So instead of saying this thing is a set of it's a data structure with these algorithms associated with it. No, here's a data structure and here's an operation, and this is how you perform that operation. And then even Michael's code, it's like you want to traverse. Okay, we want to get from here to here, and you want to do a get with a key. That's an operation that should be self-contained, and there should be the interface is the kind of thing that WASM might have, and it's not necessarily constrained by that, but it's an interesting constraint to force, really clean algorithms where you're traversing block by block, and you know where you're going to get, and you've got these various things where you might need to you need to store continuation information, and those little operations are turning into the kind of things that would convert really well into WASM, where you just
ideally you wouldn't have to care about block boundaries in any of this. You would just deal with the underlying graph, and it would automatically be queried for you. But yes, you have to make sure your algorithms are recursive and composable and all that kind of stuff, and side effect free, and
Yes, I think what currently a big discussion is about exactly this being side effect free. And so basically, if you're side effect free, it's easy to do it in WASM or easier to do it in WASM. And so I think, so there's benefits to think about in those terms. But actually, what I think in terms we're thinking is more like functional programming. Basically, looking at it from my Erlang background, is like we're just doing functional programming. And if Michael has the WASM thing in mind, that's fine for me. But yeah, and yes, I think it makes sense to think in those terms, but it shouldn't block anything. So basically, can we say that basically at least we are in agreement that the WASM work shouldn't block any Unix FS v2 work, basically. All right, cool. This was basically the agenda item I want to talk about the WASM stuff. And the other one is, I think Eric brought it up, if we should think about making this a weekly meeting, because there's plenty of stuff now going on and it might make sense to catch up more frequently. But I don't have a strong opinion about it, so it's open for discussion.
Yes, please. I feel like there's been enough stuff happening in the last couple of weeks that trying to boil it down into a short summary is like, wow, how many things can I delete from the list? So I don't like more meetings, but I feel like weekly,
So I'm totally fine with having it weekly. Rod, do you have any?
Yeah, from a keeping up to date point of view, yes, but from a getting out of bed perspective, it's not such a hot idea. But I think we're heading into summer here, and we'll hit daylight saving, and that'll make it more stomachable. So that's fine. It's probably a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could also always go back to having it every 2 weeks. Like that's not like it's in stone. So should we start? Yes, Stephen.
Have you considered changing the time, rotating the times? This is what LibTP does to deal with Australia. Like they have one meeting in the morning, one in the afternoon.
We could do it. It's just that then it becomes my late night and these guys early morning. It sucks either way.
Okay.
I think these guys are. You guys are okay with the evening, aren't you? You're night owls, aren't you? So
usually,
yeah. For me, I've got to get up in the morning for kids anyway. So my night owl capabilities are more limited than they used to be. So I'm okay with this for now.
Okay. Cool. So should we basically say we start next week with the first weekly meeting, basically? Okay. I can make sure that I update all the repositories saying week. I won't update it for now. We first do the weekly meetings, and or I will update them, whatever. So I will update the repositories to say weekly, and then update everything. Cool. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about?
We've got a bunch of things in limbo. Pull requests, particularly stuff in the spec repo and discussions. It's probably best not to try and resolve them without Michael, but we do have a lot of balls in the air that would be worth sorting out soon.
Yeah. Is there anything in particular that still needs proper review, or just generally we just need to finally workshop things?
I don't think so. I think it's just this shared mental state that we continually have trouble with, and we have these discussions about things like the terminology and the advanced layouts versus composites. That's a shared mental state problem, where we really need to get on the same page. There's a couple of them still in play at the moment, but I don't know if it'd be worth us trying to put in the hard yards without Michael, because then if we're all in shared space and he's not, then that's possibly even worse than us all having something slightly different. So I think it's just something, if we do weekly meetings, it might actually help with that problem.
I've been on that train of thought, wondering if it might be a good time to think about like checking in with some of the very central readmes and like mission statements of stuff. I don't know if that will maybe get, I don't know if that'll be easier than having concrete stuff or not, but there's some conversations we've had recently where I feel like we could short circuit to the end game much, much faster if we had some clear statements about what IPLD is not and what things we don't want to be in scope. Like just earlier in this very meeting, I thought it was really, really good to phrase the question of, do we think that WASM is a blocking requirement for Unix FS v2? And then it was very clearly, everyone agrees like, no, we don't want that. That would be wrong. So that got things on track really quickly in that example. And I feel like maybe we could do some more mission statement renovation to do that more broadly. But just a thought.
Yes, I think that's a good idea, because like when we this was done mostly by Michael, and I basically agreed on what he was doing, but it was like a year ago roughly, or 9 months ago. I think there was like back then the mission was pretty clear, and it was good to have it because we finally had an agreement on the scope and things. But now the scope is like totally different. So I guess it would make sense to do it again to see what the current scope is, because it also seems that currently we don't really have an agreement on what the scope is, or like every one of us has a different idea of what the scope is. So
yeah, and I think a lot of the current stuff in like the specs README is pretty close. I don't know, maybe we just need to even reread it and remind ourselves that it's there. It feels like a lot of the stuff we've poked around recently have gotten terribly close to opening some sort of a Pandora's box. And right, enough said. I rest my case.
yeah. So I think that's probably then an action item for when Michael is back, I guess, because again, it doesn't make sense if we find some agreement on the scope and then he comes back from vacations and it's not his.
That's the best way to do things.
It always depends. So
I think shared mental state is our biggest problem at the moment. Talking about the same thing, knowing where each other's boundaries are in terms of what we see this thing being. I think we got real problems there. So that's the thing I'd like to see us work more on.
Yeah.
I did think that whole issue, I forget the number, but that you guys put a lot of work into communicating on was really, really good. I legitimately did not realize before some of that issue was typed out.
I think you're talking about 144.
Probably, yeah. I did not realize that some of those things were in scope or like part of the consideration at all. And so I'm glad that we're having that conversation more clearly now. That's a big life improvement. As long as we're talking about big old specs renovations, something else that has been kind of in the back burner of my mind, and I hope Michael will forgive me for speaking for him too, but we encountered at the IPFS camp that the layer cake model. That thing has been through lots of iterations, and it feels a little bit better every time we've iterated on it, but the layer cake thing, like, it's still kind of, it seems to not be gelling very fast for new people. So we might want to give another round of rethinks to that. At this point, it seems like we have the data model in the middle and codecs are going in and out of that. And then we've got a bunch of other things that are going in and out of it. Earlier, we've drafted it. I think we've been stuck on 3 layers for whatever reason for longer than we've even had schemas, which is kind of funny. So now we've got like schema layer as roughly layer 3, and that's been kind of ill-fitting since the beginning. And we know it, we just didn't come up with any better suggestion, right? So we haven't been able to figure out where exactly advanced data layouts fit in there. We kind of hucked them under the schema layer, but it never quite fit, and we just ignored it, right? And it hasn't been super clear where the selectors stuff has gone. It doesn't fit clearly onto any of those 3 layers, right? It fits on top of either types or data model, or maybe something like, yeah, the 3 strict layers hasn't worked super good. I don't know what other models we can replace it with that are going to be simple either, but it was really, really tricky to talk about selectors and the layer model and some of that stuff during camp with people who weren't already steeped in it. So we've got work to do.
Yeah, as I said to you yesterday, I mostly don't care what the hierarchy is as long as there's some kind of hierarchy to this stuff, because there's so many, when you approach this from the outside, there's so many little rabbit holes to go down. We need to be able to organize this in a way that somebody new coming up to it can see where the rabbit holes are and their importance in the stack. So if they want to look at one thing, then it's not unobvious what the bundle of concerns around that thing are, rather than I have to understand all of this thing in order to know this thing that I care about. And so that's why I'm going to object to a flat model for any of this documentation or presenting any of this stuff. But I'm not invested either way in whether we do it by layer or some other mechanism. I just don't want to see selectors at the top level, graphing at the top level, discussions about cardinality at the top level, all these things. Okay.
Agree.
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's finish up. I gotta go too. So.
All right. Ciao. Good chat.
Bye.
All right.